Welcome to the Inspire to Invest podcast, where we're sharing inspiring stories from business owners, entrepreneurs, and real estate investors on the pursuit of wealth and financial freedom. Inspire to Invest is brought to you by Share, a US-based platform to help you invest in rental properties across the United States completely remotely. Hey everybody, welcome to Inspire to Invest. I've got Michael Iuculano here with us from Arizona today, and he's been through it all. Divorce, car accidents, the loss of his best friend, bankruptcy, and health issues. But he's back, better, and stronger than ever. He's approaching $2 billion in funds, deals funded over his 22 years in real estate investing and hard money lending. So I can't wait to dive into all of that. How are you, Michael?
I'm great, and thanks for having me on. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Thanks for being here. So obviously you have been through it all. So maybe we can just take it back to some of the early years before real estate and investing and all these different things came into your life, just to kind of set the tone for where you were to bridge the gap to where you are today.
Yeah, I think I've always, from day one, I've always been a person that tests the limits, uh, either with, what you can get away with or what you can accomplish. Uh, Kind of from day one. I remember my own mother telling me about how literally the day I was born, I was actually born with the umbilical cord wrapped around my neck.
Yeah.
So definitely came out with a bang. But um, when the kind of the earliest part of my memory is I was born in Dallas. We lived in Maryland, but as far back as I can remember was really when we moved to Miami in, I guess it would have been 87, 86. So I was about 4, almost 5 years old.
Yeah.
And that's a great place to be. There's a lot of inspiration, there's a lot of wealth, there's a lot of just a lot going on. And so that set in early in my psyche, and I wanted it. And I remember we lived I always tell the story. I used to think $100 was a lot of money, and I remember we lived not too far from like an exotic car dealership, and I used to think like Ferraris were $100,
Yeah.
and
Definitely.
I wanted one, so I was going to make $100, and I was going to get a Ferrari.
Yeah.
So little things that shape kind of your drive and your want, but that's probably the as far back of my recollection.
Yeah. So then where did real estate really come into the picture for you? And then specifically hard money lending. Maybe you can
Sure.
talk a little bit about what that looks like for you and just how you're really making sure that you are secure and you're protected when you are making those kinds of investments.
Yeah, so at no point in my life till maybe about 18, 20 did real estate or lending become a career path that I thought of.
Yeah.
When I was younger, it was, I actually wanted to be a sports agent or attorney. And being in Miami, as I mentioned, and the Miami Hurricanes football team was very, very good at that time. I memorized the fight song. It was all about college football. And so I wanted to be in that business. I
Yeah.
didn't end up going that way. Um, went about my life, my childhood, whatever. And then when it was time in high school, maybe junior year, trying to figure out what I wanted to do, believe it or not, I pursued being a chef, and I pursued photography, and I went into a couple trade schools for a very small period of time.
Yeah.
It wasn't what I wanted, wasn't what I loved. And by way of kind of after high school, which was about 2000, 2001, the industry for lending was very, it was on fire, especially here in Scottsdale, Arizona. We
Yeah.
were a growth market. And I remember at the time I had friends that were doing very well. And to some degree, I didn't think they were that bright, but they had it figured out. They were killing it.
Yeah.
They were making money, and they just put one foot in front of the other. And I was like, I want that.
So then what
And
kind of deals like were they investing? Like how are things structured? Like are they coming in as first position mortgage lenders? Are they coming in as LPs? Like what kind of deals are you
well,
typically
at
looking
that
at?
time when we were 18, 19, 20, most of those people in my circle, my friends in that circle, were in lending. They weren't they want to do real estate. They were figuring it out. A
Yeah.
couple of those guys were maybe in wholesaling and such,
Yeah.
but more prominent influence of what I was going to do for my career path, as opposed to the investing path, was in lending, traditional mortgage lending. And so I got into traditional mortgage lending.
Yeah.
By way of that, I was a big networker. Networking was a big thing for me, meeting people, knowing who I needed to know. And by way of that was how I subsequently got into real estate investing while still doing lending, which I still do
Yeah.
today.
So now you touched on one thing just in terms of, a lot of times who, not how.
Yeah.
Can you talk about some of the strategies that you employ just to make the most of that? Because I think sometimes people really struggle with breaking the ice, follow-ups, really just making connections that matter to, move the needle for themselves, right? So maybe you can talk about what you focused on and what made you so successful in that space.
I think for me, I was just relentless. Who, not how is definitely the case. But it didn't mean that because it wasn't the right who that I wouldn't interact or again, put that path forward with that person or that
Yeah.
scenario. Um, I think I was just at that time was just thirsting for knowledge and deals. I didn't care if I failed. I didn't. I remember saying I didn't care if I had to live in my car because I studied a lot of people who it was like the average millionaire is like bankrupt 3 times before they actually retain it.
Yeah.
I knew that at the time I was young. I didn't have a family to support. So if I was going to fail, let's fail fast. Let's fail
Yeah.
now. Let's fail forward. As far as the who, not how, I think now at 42, almost 43, I've learned it's really interesting that problems never go down. They only go up. And what I mean by that, like in my sales organization, I never complain down. I never complain to my sales guys. Everything's amazing. I want to lift up from the bottom.
Yeah.
If I need help or I'm having a challenge with something, I go up, right? Because generally what I've seen is the people that I enjoy networking with and having in my circle
Yeah.
who are more successful than me, they're generally willing to help.
Yeah.
So I say that pretty strategically that problems should only go up, they shouldn't go down.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I can appreciate that. I had a mentor that talked about always start learning from someone in the tax bracket that you want to be in, because the people that are the same as you or below just can't even understand maybe what is required to get to that next phase of
And
income,
and
right?
look, the original golden rule is treat others how you want to be treated. I completely agree with
Yeah.
that. But my close second life rule is I will not take advice from somebody in the category that is not doing better than me. I'm not taking marriage advice from someone who's been divorced 6 times.
Yeah.
They're going to want to give you their opinion, but how valuable is it? I'm
Yeah.
not taking financial advice from somebody who can not pay their bills, but just because they're my friend, I'm going to listen. I'm not taking
Yeah.
fitness
Yeah.
advice from somebody who's overweight and has no discipline. That's
Yeah.
the real golden rule.
Yeah. No, I can definitely understand that. Now, we did talk about in your bio just some of the different setbacks that you've encountered. Can you talk a little bit about some of those challenges and how you overcame those obstacles to be where you are now?
Yeah. Boy, where do we start? Uh, let's see. Typical high school, got in trouble, nothing major. I had a really, up until I had a car accident that was very bad. I had a friend die in my car while I was driving, and it was heartbreaking. There was a lot of legal related to it, and I wouldn't say it woke me up, but it was like, hey, this is real life. I had to grow up quickly. Prior to that, ironically, 2 months before that incident, my parents decided to tell us that they were getting divorced. So I had like divorce, potential serious jail time at the time for a fatal car accident. And in my head, just in this suspense of not knowing who I was going to be, what was my life going to look like, what were my options, what was my path. But you put your sort of nose to the pavement and you just keep moving.
Yeah.
Um, Funny enough, having gone through that actually made me less anxiety to unknown situations because I understood you have to control the controllables. There's a lot of things that we're not going to be able to control, and we got to keep moving.
Yeah.
And so that ability, especially in the business world when there's constant problems, constant people coming at you, I think was an invaluable skill set to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. And just putting things in perspective, right? Like obviously we all go through challenges and hard times and stuff, and they don't last. And the only way out is through. Now for where you are today, just looking at, the logo behind you, I'm sure you're
Yeah.
also involved in, securing money from people to place into different investments. Can you talk about your business as it is today?
Yeah. So, um, what I do is mortgage lending. I focus more so on the alternate and private sector. We still do traditional lending. I just don't market for it. So a lot of what I do is bridge loans, harder to prove income, credit challenges, loans that are speed based that need more of a common sense approach than your traditional bank loan.
Yeah.
I tell people that if they can go to the bank, they should go to the bank. That's not my market. That's not who I'm never going to compete with the bank if the bank process is something you're able and willing to go through.
Yeah.
So a lot of alternative lending. I also work with a lot of investors that have cash that are looking to place funds. I say that they don't want to be in, they want to be a hard money investor, but they don't want to be in the hard money business. They don't want to vet deals. They don't want to market. They want deals that they can invest in, and they go to the mailbox once a month and play golf 3 times a week.
Yeah.
More
In
passive
terms of
things.
just the people that you're working with, for us here in Canada, there have been a lot of instances with like fraudulent activity with mortgage brokers and real estate investors and things like that. So what kind of due diligence are you, if you're brokering these deals, how are you protecting your lenders to make sure that they do have all the appropriate information, you're crossing your T's and dotting your I's, so to speak?
Sure. So just one thing to mention, we broker some, and I also am a partner in my own fund as well. So to answer your question, I mean, everything we do goes through title. We're getting that formal valuations on almost everything.
Yeah.
We're getting applications. We're getting the story. Um, there's so much need and so much business in our service that if someone isn't willing to go through the process, there's 12 more right behind them. So I know I found, having done this for so long, that the ones that are fraudulent or the ones that are problems are the ones that complain about going through the process as if their expectation was to get, a large sum of money on a handshake.
Yeah.
So there's telltale signs that, and I set the expectation. I mean, look, nobody calls me and says, "Hey, can you make it take longer?" They all want it right away,
Yeah.
but this isn't a loan from a friend to a friend. There's a process. This is a
Yeah.
real professional, large dollar amount transaction.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm not saying that you are looking at things in that way. It just, in my experience working with one of these companies that really went up in flames, like it looked like they were doing everything right. They were a division of a really large multinational mortgage corporation, and they did provide performers on the properties. And the problem is a lot of the appraisals that were provided were fraudulent, in a lot of instances, significantly overvalued or based on after repair values. There was the first position lending, but then there was also private lending unsecured on top of that. And in some instances where someone might think, well, this is just to borrow the property, but they're borrowing like 3 times the value of the property on it. Like there's just so much wrapped up in it that as the
I mean,
layers of the onion
that
have
doesn't even
been
sound
peeled
like due
back,
diligence.
I mean, as it stood, like based on what was provided initially, like it looked like they were doing everything by the book. And then once everything fell apart, you really saw the full scope of the situation and stuff like that, right? So that's why I just asked, like, for someone that is coming in, looking at these from the lens of a lender, like what you're presenting them, just to make sure that they don't ever find themselves in a situation like that.
So when we're doing our due diligence, the first thing I always do is find out what's the story, what's the need, right? What's the problem,
Yeah.
that we're trying to solve, or what's the benefit? Because these types of private loans, people don't do them because they want them. They're expensive. So there's
Yeah.
usually a reason why. I get very clear on what's the objective or the reason. Formal valuations, I'm never lending three times the value, right?
No,
So
of course you
that's,
shouldn't be. Of course
yeah,
not.
no.
Nobody
Uh,
should be. But
Also trying to understand the exit strategy, right?
yeah,
Return on investment is one thing, but there's another thing called return of investment.
yeah,
That's really important.
yeah,
Uh, Understanding the story, the exit strategy, the plan. What if all of that goes to hell? Then what? Then what do we have?
yeah,
And again, seeing as we're heavily marketed, we're the highest ranked hard money lender in the entire state on Google. Fact, someone can look that up. So we see a lot of deals. I don't have to force deals. I've done this 22, almost 23 years.
yeah,
There is way more deals than money
yeah,
uh, right now. So I want to do every deal, but I know I'm not going to. Does
yeah,
that make
yeah,
sense? My allegiance will always be to the investor
yeah.
more than the.
Yeah, and I think that's the way that it should be. And on that note, we're just going to take a really brief break for a word from our sponsors
Yeah.
and be right back. Inspire to Invest is proudly sponsored by Share, a US-based platform designed to help Canadians and Americans invest in rental properties across the United States completely remotely. With Share, you don't have to deal with tenants, repairs, or trying to figure out unfamiliar markets on your own. They handle the entire process for you, from setting up your US entities to sourcing vetted rental properties in landlord-friendly states to managing everything post-close with professional property management. It's a done-for-you turnkey solution designed to give you all the upside of real estate ownership without the typical landlord headaches. If you've been wanting to diversify into US real estate but didn't know where to start, Share could be just the partner you've been looking for. What if I told you your next big client, investor, or business opportunity is already watching you? They just don't know you yet. In today's digital world, attention is currency. Sharing the right content can mean the difference between being seen as an expert or being completely overlooked. If you're not actively building your personal brand, you're leaving money, influence, and opportunity on the table. That is where Executive Lens comes in. We help busy business owners, investors, and entrepreneurs capture and curate compelling content so you can build a powerful personal brand on LinkedIn and beyond without adding hours to your already packed schedule. Through high quality video storytelling, we help you capture the essence of your brand. So when people see you online, they don't just scroll by, they stop, watch, and engage. Your story deserves to be told. Your expertise deserves to be recognized. And your personal brand, it absolutely deserves to stand out. Let's make that happen. Turning content into connection, LinkedIn leadership starts here. Find out more at executivelens.co.
Big ideas require big capital. And behind every empire you admire out there is someone who's mastered the art of raising it. Elon Musk, he's raised over $75 billion. Warren Buffett, he's built his empire by attracting capital from others. And every real estate tycoon you know of, their portfolio didn't grow from their savings. They scaled by raising capital. So if you're building something that matters, your ability to raise capital is not optional. It's literally the difference between slow growth and true scale. The challenge you're going to have, though, is you haven't built the systems, the story, or the structure that investors trust. Capital doesn't go to the person with the best idea. It goes to the person whose business is actually ready for it. So pick your stage, own it, build what your business needs at that stage to be able to attract the level of capital that you need where you're at today, not where you think you want to be tomorrow. If you do all of that, capital will follow. So the question is, what stage are you in, and what's the next thing that you need to do to grow your business?
Click the link below to schedule your capital raising session. We're going to go ahead and map out your custom blueprint and show you exactly how to implement this system in your business. Now remember, if you don't raise the capital, you don't pay. Click on the link below to schedule your strategy session now.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Inspired to Invest. I've got Michael Iuculano here with me, and I probably said that wrong, but I'm doing my best. Before the break, we were just talking about due diligence for mortgage lending and hard money lending, and just some of the things that you'll look at just to make sure that your investors are protected. With that being said, I always like to ask, what's the craziest thing that you've experienced as a real estate investor or through the course of your career?
Well, we had a client who I did several fundings for. This one's pretty intense. We had a client, no names will be mentioned, that we did about 5 or 6 deals for. He was a pretty decent payer, and he did his last funding with us. And I get a call from one of my investors, like maybe 4 months. The guy actually went into default. And I get a message with a link by text from one of my investors, the guy who funded the deal.
Yeah.
And it said the guy's name, and he was on a link on the local news website. So I click on the link, and I've had dinner with this person. I've had my family with him. We developed a little bit of a rapport. And so I read this link, and I'm like baffled. This person was being investigated for murder. A pretty intense, brutal one, and eventually got convicted of this. And I'm sitting here basically realized that I did some fundings, had dinners, and was interacting with somebody who murdered somebody.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
So I would say that was probably the craziest thing that I've experienced.
Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely really crazy. And it just goes to show you that you never really know who you're dealing with.
No.
So, yeah, that's definitely crazy. But on the flip side of things, what would you say is something that you're also most proud of? And maybe what's one of your biggest successes? Straight to the
Uh,
other end of the spectrum.
Having the reputation I do, I found marketing to be really exciting, and it's funny because I always said if I wasn't in lending, I'd be in marketing. I think internet marketing is crazy. Like if
Yeah.
the best marketer is the winner, not the best salesperson.
Yeah.
But over time, I've done so many deals. I do a lot of repeat business that I don't even take any of the sales calls anymore. My sales team does. But because of my reputation and the way that I treat people, I still have a $100 million a year personal production business if I were to turn all the marketing off, just because of the past clients and my name and my referrals. So I would say my reputation, the straightforwardness, and that over time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think taking care of your customer will create
Yes.
repeat customers, right? So I
Yeah.
definitely believe in that wholeheartedly. Now, for anyone that is interested in doing passive investing of this nature, what would you say would be some advice that you'd pass along or maybe a lesson?
You're saying on the lending side or on the real
Yeah.
estate?
Yeah. So if someone's coming in wanting to be a client, like if this is a strategy that they've never considered before, what do you think are some things that they need to be aware of? Maybe some minimum investments, like how you're diversifying them.
So I would say, I think this is investing. No matter what, it's investing. There's always risk. You could lose it. You have to be comfortable with the investment you have. Our fund's $100K minimum investment. It's an investment.
And
I
is it
don't.
specifically
And
like a mortgage fund, like a MIC?
yes. If it's your last 100 grand, I don't want it, right? Like we deal with accredited investors. We deal with people who, truthfully, I don't want someone call me every 5 minutes because it's their last 100 grand and they're so nervous that's not who I want to work with, right?
Yeah.
But as far as what they should be aware of, I don't think somebody should do trust deed investing unless there's some sort of professional, whether me or the next guy, who understands mortgages, understands the risk, can explain the risk, can explain the upside.
Yeah.
Because there is a lot of attention on trust deed investing. It's a great investment. And of course, like anything, often it's being conveyed as the greatest thing on earth. I think it's the greatest thing on earth, but I also know the risks. I also know what's a good deal and what's not. So they need to be aware of the risks. They also need to be aware of what type of bankroll they have and what makes a deal, like a reasonable deal to invest based on their risk and reward profile.
Yeah. Now, on the other side of things, just in terms of real estate investing, we've talked a lot about the lending and the mortgages and stuff like that. Do you invest in real estate as an operator as well?
I do.
Yeah. So what does your portfolio currently look like?
I think right now we sold off a lot in the past couple of years. I think I'm at about 14 houses.
Yeah.
Um, the multi-space I was in is not kind of neutral on it in terms of
Yeah.
which way it could go. At least here in Phoenix at this current moment of time, rentals they're a little bit soft. I mean, there's certainly areas and one-off properties and neighborhoods that are highly desirable, but as a whole, it's a little bit soft.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I know some investors that are down in that area as well, that, they had this short-term strategy and then they had to switch to midterm. And, there's different ways that they're employing that to make sure that they are successful just because they've had to move and pivot throughout like the pandemic and other things,
yeah.
right? But now in terms of things like how investing has changed your life and financial freedom, what does that look like for you and where do you feel like you're at in that journey?
I mean, I would say, obviously financial freedom is a huge thing, right? I've wanted this since I was 5 years old, and I, told you that backstory, but
Yeah.
it's important, right? I mean, finances shape your life. They dictate your choices. They dictate your freedom. I have two little girls. So being able to be in a position where you have financial freedom, I think also enables you to kind of either double down or take some bigger shots, that you do have this basis of platform that you're good, that if this investment or that deal doesn't work, you're not overly in trouble. But if it does, you can keep compounding.
Yeah.
But it's of course it's changed my life. I live an amazing life. I have a great lifestyle. I have some incredible conveniences and freedoms where I place a lot of value, and that enables it. I don't know what else would enable it.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, obviously, it's not just a financial freedom, it's a time freedom and the
Yes.
flexibility to be able to do the things
Well, I'm kind of a workaholic, so but it's funny because I'll work, and then I'll be like, God, I'm sick of work for today. But yes, there is time freedom, but by default, I'm kind of a workaholic.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I can appreciate that. I had my own agency for almost 20 years, so I definitely probably worked harder than the average employee, like a lot of
Sure.
evenings, weekends, and stuff like that. Now, the name of this podcast is Inspired to Invest. I always like to ask my guests if they've got a particular quote that really motivates or inspires them.
Oh yeah. We didn't go through all the other tragedies, but not only does this quote inspire me, it's tattooed on my arm and it's my life quote. And it says, to every adversity, there's an equal or greater benefit. I don't know if you can see it. But having gone through the bankruptcy, personal divorce, a kid at 17, the car accident, parents' divorce, all the other things.
Yeah.
And then, of course, studying people, it really almost seems automatic that anybody who's really going to kill it, you're going to get your ass kicked. And if you're not willing or wanting, just stay put then. You know what I mean? So to every adversity, there's an equal or greater benefit.
Yeah, I love that. Now, for anyone that wants to get in touch with you to learn more about your services or your fund, for example, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
They can go to mjicapital.com. My contact info, my team contact info is on there as well.
Great.
All of our social, obviously, my name, Michael Iuculano, that's IUCULANO. They can find me on pretty much any of the social networks as well.
Perfect. So we'll make sure that we include that in the show notes below. Of course, thanks for taking time out of your busy day to be with
Thank you
us
so much
today.
for having me.
And for anyone that is watching or listening, if you've enjoyed this episode, make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe. And you're following along on social at Inspired to Invest Podcast. And remember, when you invest in yourself, the sky's the limit. Thanks again. Thank you to Cher for bringing us this month's episodes of Inspired to Invest. The views represented on this podcast are for general information only and does not constitute investment or other professional advice or an offering of securities. The host and guests featured on Inspired to Invest make no representations as to the performance of any particular investment. Should you decide to make an investment, you are responsible for conducting your own review and analysis. It is recommended that you obtain independent legal, accounting, and tax advice from licensed professionals.